welcome everyone to First Draft, Final Draft. My name is Jess Hinds and I'm the creator of meditative writing. So I work with writers, both emerging and professional, usually with the intersection of meditation and neuroscience to relieve the pain of suffering to relieve the suffering from the inevitable pain of writing. And today we are here with the wonderful Kristina Woo, who is writing a series, or finished writing, for a Netflix series.
The room's still happening, but
okay,
yeah, it's ongoing.
Which is great. And yeah, we're just going to talk a little bit about first drafts to final drafts and the writing process, and then open up for questions for you guys. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit first of how you got into the position that you're currently in?
Sure. So right now I'm a staff writer on a new Netflix show that Ryan Murphy is executive producing. It's called Simply Halston. It's about the designer who was big in the 60s and the 80s. He's going to be played by Nervewracking. It's really exciting and overwhelming. It was sort of a long road for me. I used to work in independent film in New York for a long time. And I loved it because I was working at a company that paid you well, gave you health insurance. Like, it was a steady job in independent film, which is rare. It's like non-existent basically. So I went to NYU Film School, so like to come out of that and to get a job at that sort of place was a real dream come true. But I kind of was lying to myself when I was saying that I was okay with only making one thing a year, not really writing, or thinking that I didn't have time to write. And so after a certain amount of time, I just sort of realized my lease was coming up, my boss wasn't going to promote me, TV was finally getting good, and there were jobs and people were hiring people. And then I realized that I wanted to make that leap because I'm also a producer and TV writing is writing and producing. Yeah. So I was those are the two things I'm best at creatively. Let's move to LA, let's try to make the change. And it took a little bit when I first moved to LA. Changing careers is hard in any industry. You sort of have to start from the bottom again, which was a little bit of a tough goal for me to swallow because the person I was working for here in New York, you work in independent film, if you say his name, say his company, everyone knows him. Yeah. There's no explanation. And I got to LA and, looking for assistant job, people were so what is independent film? And I was oh no, I'm not gonna get this job. Mm-hmm. So it took a while. I basically, when I moved, told everyone I knew, literally everyone I knew, that I wanted to get into TV writing, and then if they or anyone who had any remote connection to it, had any free time, I would meet them, I would buy them a coffee, just wanted to put out feelers. So a good friend of mine, after a year and a half of me being in LA, she worked on The Affair, which is on Showtime. She was a script coordinator, which is a writer support staff job within the writer's room. Knew that the showrunner of the show needed a new assistant, and by that time, I'd been an assistant for 7 years. Yeah, 7 years, 8 years. So I was I will do anything. I'll do anything with this job, literally, which included the interviewing with her and paying out 7 a.m. in LA, which LA geography is insane. I was I'll do anything with this job. I want to learn how to run a show. I want to learn from the best. She had just won a Golden Globe for season 1, and was looking for a new assistant, and she never had an assistant who had assistant experience. So I was I will nail this. I can do this. So I was her assistant for about a year and a half for season 2. It was the hardest year of my life. I'm a hard worker. That's the hardest I've ever worked, ever. And then she promoted me to writer's assistant, which is it's an apprenticeship role. It's another support staff role in the writer's room area. And what that is that you, if you don't know, you're there to take notes. You're there to basically be the secretary for everything that's happening in the room in terms of gathering everyone's thoughts, organizing them in a like clear and succinct way. And so when the writers go to write their outlines or scripts, they can refer to their notes and basically just be able to bang it out. And that was really a great training ground for me because even though I'd written for a long time, I sort of realized that I like didn't really know a lot about television writing. Because I at school we just did features, like I just really didn't know anything. So it was a really great grad school experience almost, and just like learning how to be in a room because I'm observing everyone. Like usually you're not really supposed to, as an assistant, you're not supposed to participate. I was lucky that I was able to, like by the end of my time on the show, I co-wrote a script, pitched the ending, like it was an amazing journey, but like getting into that room initially, like definitely felt like I needed to earn that right to talk.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, like your job is to observe, not necessarily to participate. But it was a really amazing way for me to just like learn the do's and the don'ts and see other people do things that were really smart or see people do things that weren't so smart. So going forward, when I found myself in a room, like knew what to do and what not to do. So I also worked on Sorry for Your Loss, which is a based on a watch show with Elizabeth Olsen, and they did the script learning job, which is basically if like with every single draft of anything, an outline, a script, a like story area, it's your job to proof it for grammar, spelling, but also like story logic. Like you're sort of the like you and the showrunner are sort of like the keeper of like everything that happens in the show, and if you spot a change, making sure that it like tracks with everything else. It's a really amazing job, but it's also really difficult. It's really stressful because like, you know, it's one thing to get a script at like 5 p.m. and they say like, take your time, it's great, whatever. But usually it's like midnight, we need it tomorrow, call time's at 3. It's like, okay, I'll do the best I can. So that was another, like, I'm really grateful that I did that job. It's very difficult. So all this to say, my boss on Halston, Simply Halston, I worked with him on Be Fair. He was another writer. And he was just really always like super supportive of me, super encouraging, asked to read me. So we had developed a working relationship over seasons 2 through 4. And once he got the show, he called me and said that he wanted to staff me. So that's pretty normal in terms of like, you know, some people like you can write a play or like write something amazing and like right off the bat get offered jobs. But most people come up as assistants, and your first few staff jobs, I think. Staff writer is the lowest titled position in a writer's room. It's like staff writer, story editor, executive story editor, co-producer, producer.
It's an amazing hierarchy that is overwhelming.
Well, and it's like it all means writer, but like it's just like whatever the title is like so yeah, usually you get those jobs for people you've already worked for. So like in my case, and a lot of people's cases, like I guess in my boss's mind, like I proved myself in terms of like knowing how to do the job, like showing up early, staying late, like being good at story, pitching, keeping things straight in my mind. Like there was one person in the room one year who was like, she was totally new to TV writing. She's an incredible writer, just had never been in a TV room before. And in the fair, there are like a lot of different timelines, and it's like the past, the future. It's like, and it's different sides of different stories. It's a lot to keep in your mind at one time. And she was like, yeah, I don't know how you guys do it. And I'm like, well, I have to. Like, because if I don't, I will be fired. Because it's literally the whole point. Like, you have to. So I'm definitely coming at it from definitely like an apprenticeship assistant place. Everyone's path is different.
Yeah, everyone's path is different, but I do think for television, like that's the most common one. And no matter what it is, like the first script I worked on professionally, like it was based off of a play and a director saw it. But after that, every single gig I got was somehow helped by someone I knew. You know, like that networking thing is really, really important. And it's only comes from being like ridiculously hardworking and ridiculously easy to work with, you know, and you know, just so that's why I think, you know, networking events, whether you're networking up, sideways, or slightly below, is really, really important because you know, just like very rarely does anyone get hired because there's like why would people take a risk on someone they have absolutely no connection and no reference to? You know, it just makes no sense. Like even when I'm doing a little play in New York, you know, for just a tiny bit, like it's very rare that I'll even cast an actor that I can't call someone and just be like, yo, you know, week 6, how are they? Are they gonna crumble on me? Are they gonna, you know, because I've had too many experiences working with actors that we get to, you know, dress rehearsal and suddenly they're a nightmare to work with. And I'm just like, oof, I'm never casting blind again. I'm always gonna pick someone that I have reference to of what they're like throughout the process.
And I think the thing that's important to remember, because I know like the idea of networking can sometimes feel like weird and gross or like disingenuous, but it's like, to me, I see it as like building a community. And like, not just, I mean like events where, you know, you're meeting people you've never met before, that's great. But I think it's really about like thinking about all the people you've worked with in the past, all the people you went to college with, like all the people you've like done other projects with, because you're all, again, this is like I am coming at this from like an assistant perspective, but like you're all sort of like in the rising tide together.
Yeah.
Like all of my friends who I started as assistants with, like they're now agents and managers and like also in writers' rooms. So like it's not just people you don't know, it's like everyone you do know. Like when I say that I literally told everyone I knew that I was moving to LA, like I'm not kidding, like teachers, relatives, friends of my parents, like my mom's patients, like I went insane. But it like pays off because you never know who's gonna like reach out and say yes, so.
Yeah, and being, I think, open and confident about talking about your work and what you're doing, but never pushy and inappropriate. And I do think that there's a fine line between it. Like telling everyone, saying, hey, if you hear of anything, please let me know, is very different than, you know, I've been in 2 situations in the past week where I had someone who didn't know me at all come up to me and instantly just be like, can you introduce me to this person? And I was like, I'm sorry, what's your name? And I'm like, I wouldn't even introduce like my father to that person, you know, if I have very few favors with that person, and you know, so just don't do that, you know. And also I did have someone who sort of like tricked me into meeting someone who was wanting me to pass something on to, because one of the writers I work with is an assistant to like one of the biggest actors, you know, of our time. And I realized, they're like, oh, just come to dinner with my friend. I was like, cool, we're gonna have dinner. And then all of a sudden I realized halfway through that they were like pitching me a project. And I was just like, I was so mad at both of those people, and I made it very like clear in a really polite way that I was like, this is not appropriate. Like if you wanted to, you could just ask me and say, hey, could I introduce you to this person? They're interested in getting to this person. And I would have told them either yes or no, depending on how well I, you know, felt comfortable with that. But I think the cool thing about this is that you work your butt off. And if you work your butt off and you work harder than everyone else, you know, eventually it can pay off. And then you get to write for some fabulous TV. So let's talk a little bit about first drafts.
Sure.
So everyone has a different approach to what they do for first draft. Is there anything that's particularly unique, or, you know, like when you're going in for a first draft of something, what is the priority in the first draft?
If I'm going to give a 2-part answer, because my one answer that pertains to working on like someone else's show.
Yeah.
And then I have an answer for working on your own. So for working on someone else's show, depending on how thorough your writer's room is, like the Affair writer's room, it would take a week and a half, 2 weeks to write one episode, and it was because literally, and I think this is just like everyone has a different process. So my boss, and I think rightfully so, because the show kind of was like a play. Like every scene that we wrote, which was all, like, was so specific to the point where like we would know like when the conversation turn would happen and how, and like sometimes we would bring lines in the room, as opposed to like Halston, which I'm what I'm on now. It was a little bit looser, but still like I have the roadmap.
Yeah.
So if I'm doing a first draft of an outline or a script, I'm basically just like doing what we wrote in the room. Which in a way it's like, you know, a lot of people think it's stifling creatively, but like I don't, because in those spaces between the like meticulous breaking, like that's where you can like insert your voice or your humor, or like, you know, a lot of times you'll break something in the room and like it'll make sense in like beat form, but then when you write it out, you're like, nah, it kind of doesn't work, and then you talk to your boss and he okays it or she doesn't or whatever. So for me, it's just like getting it on the page. Like if I get stuck on dialogue, I literally am like, bracket, like this is what they're talking about, like move on. Like spit draft, just like get it out. I am an overwriter, which I think for me is helpful because I would rather edit that than be like, here's my big script, and they're like, what? So yeah, I want to make sure, I always want to make sure that whatever I'm doing, especially in the first draft, is like logically, step by step, like story-wise, emotionally, I understand what's happening. You can always take things out, but as long as I understand why everything's happening, that's super helpful. And also there are times too where it's just like, you are gonna have to write something that like your boss loves and like maybe you hate. Or it's just like, I would never write this, or like this doesn't make sense to me, but like you just have to do it. So for me, a lot of times first drafts on shows are like easier in quotes. Only because it's like you've been given the roadmap, and it's like an assignment. Like you have a week to do it or 2 weeks, and you just gotta like do what your boss wants. And for me, like that structure, I like having structure because sometimes if you don't, it's like if you have everything in front of you, then it's like which way do I go? I don't know. For my own projects, I have to do a lot of. I used to hate outlining, and then I started working in television. And I was like, oh no, outlining is my friend. Because you either are going to do all the work up front, or you're going to do it later when like you've already twisted your mind into like a million different knots, and you don't think you can undo those knots. You know what I mean? So depending on what it is, I will. If I'm writing on something that I actually don't feel like I have a good like knowledge grasp on, I'll do research. So that could be anything like watching movies, reading books, talking to other people. But all the time, like taking notes, like lots of notes, outlining, making sure I understand the structure, or at least like where I want it to end. And like again, like full spit draft, like if I get stuck on something, like move on, like I'm not gonna be like, this should be like an and or like a the, you know what I mean? Like it's, like you were saying, like if you get stuck in those things, you're never gonna finish. And I feel like once you get that first draft done, it's like a relief. It's like, okay, great, you know, I can totally rewrite this, but I have it. So I always try to give myself time limits also. Like in TV writing, you usually, for a half hour, you get, on an outline, you get like a week, I think. In an hour, you get 2 weeks. Same thing for your scripts. Like your boss will give you your deadlines, and like that's just what it is. And then for myself, if I'm writing something on my own, I'm usually doing it for like a fellowship deadline, or like, you know, I know I need to write this thing for like a meeting, or like my manager wants to read it. So like, I'm very good at like setting like, okay, if it's an hour-long script, it's 60 pages. Let's do 5 pages a day. And I normally like, you know, just like really like spread it out, be reasonable, but also like stick to that stuff because you can do it.
Yeah, I think one of the most important things about an early draft, I mean, I've just found, and this isn't true for everyone, every single writer is different, everyone's brain is different, everyone's life is different, so this does not apply to everyone, but the majority of the writers that I work with, it is so much better to vomit through an early draft really, really quick in the messiest way, because at least then you get the same emotional through line, which is one of the hardest things to patchwork together later, than if, you know, because it's like, it's not going to be right. The first draft is never going to be right. It's never going to be everything it needs. And so, since the only thing the first draft needs to be is done, then you might as well, you know, there's plenty of times in the first draft where I'm like, blah, blah, stuff about hunting. You know, and then I'm like,
and then she cries.
Yeah, and then that scene. And then there's a war sequence in which someone gets badly injured, you know, and so it's like, even if I have to sort of, you know, plow through, because if you spend any more than just 4 minutes staring at the screen, you're wasting time that could be used for much more valuable things. And so I think having that of like, what can I, for my life and where I'm at, how many pages can I do, how many times a week, and let me see, and put a hard deadline for yourself. Tell some people you know, so that you have a little bit of pressure about when that's gonna come up. And then just know that like, you always have more rewriting to do. And so it's like anything you can turn shit into fertilizer, into some good flowers and trees and stuff later on.
That's another sort of aspect of this that I didn't mention, which is like, if you know people who also are writers, and being in a writers group is really helpful.
Yeah.
Like, you're all holding yourself accountable. Now that, like, I'm sure we all have sort of like looser schedules, or like we can be more in charge of our day-to-day. Like, if I know some of my other friends are also on script, like, it's like, okay, today's a study day. We're meeting at like someone's house at like 10. We'll catch up for like 20 minutes. We'll work till lunch. We'll like eat lunch together, and then we'll keep working. So that even if we're like not actually like socializing, we're all just like, it's like we're in school. And I think thinking about writing like it is a 9-to-5 job, for me that was like a light bulb that went off for me, because like in high school and college and even after college, it's like, oh, like you have that romantic idea of like, I'm gonna write from like midnight till 4, like that's my best work. Like, I don't need to sleep for the dead. And it's like, no, sleep's so good, I'm gonna die. Like, like, there are times in your life where you do have to do that because it's the only time you have. But then once you can get past that, or even like, I used to like write at work at other jobs.
I used to work box office.
Yeah.
Just writing the whole time.
Yeah, so like, as soon as I realized that I can view it as a job, that also helped me like structure my day. So like, even like right now, I'm in a writer's room, but we've finished breaking on the story, so we're all basically just like working from home off on script. Like, even though I don't have to like be anywhere technically, I still like get up at 6, exercise at 7. Like, I treat the day normally, and it's like if I want to see someone for lunch or dinner, it's like wanting to eat anyway, great. I think like just getting yourself in the mindset of like, I'm like, and if it takes like, I'll a lot of times like in my schedule on my Google Calendar say like writing from like 9 to 6, just so that like I don't schedule anything else. There are a lot of times where like just anything you can do to like, I don't know, not trick yourself, but like trick yourself, because like, I think the thing that I realized when I said like, set the like, if you need to finish a script in X time, and it's like, that's 5 pages a day, like, that's not taking into account like writer's block. But I found that like, if you have writer's block, it's because you don't understand what you're writing. You like, like either emotionally or intellectually. So a lot of times too, to me, writing isn't necessarily like getting pages out, but it's like doing the thinking. Like, I spend a lot of time just like doing the thinking before you start.
I like to identify the difference between like daydreaming and creative stuff versus thinking, which is more cognitive and analytical on the left side of the brain. Mm-hmm. So like, like when I'm writing, and I always do it in a coffee shop because I like to feel uncomfortable because it makes me write better stuff. And so like, there's plenty of times where I'm sitting there and then like, you'll just see for like 5 minutes like this, like, just like watching my characters in my head, like I'm like, no, I can do better than that. There's like a cooler, bigger ending that's there, and I'm like swiping away. But like that sort of like visualization, that daydream, right, of possibilities. I do think that like, but that to me is different than writer's block, which is where it's like you're staring at the page, your brain is blank, or like you're getting up and you're doing the dishes instead of writing. And I think so if you're daydreaming and you're playing with things in your mind, that I think is okay. But writer's block, I would specifically say, is like when the limbic system gets tripped and you go into fight or flight or freeze, which is very, very different than just like playing in the mind and staring out the window. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Yeah. But yeah, I agree that putting it on your calendar, and I think if you plot things out on your calendar, if you say where you're going to write, how long you're going to write, what you're going to work on, decision fatigue is real, and the less choices you have to make that morning to get you from waking up to writing, the more likely you're going to write. And so I just find if I make all of those decisions like the night before, the week before, and then I just wake up and I just do whatever my Google Calendar says, and I wake up and I'm like, oh, I'm going to the coffee shop and I'm going over the first 20 pages of my book from 9 until 4 p.m. Great. And I don't have to make any decisions. I'm just going with the flow flow of my day, and that's been amazingly, because when I started writing my book, like I had no outside deadlines. I was just like, I'm gonna write this book, I'm gonna get it done, and not having a paycheck already from it, I was just like, oh, I'm a little bit less motivated to do this. And so I really had to go in there and block out the exact times that I was gonna do it and what chapters I was gonna work on when. And if I sat down and my body was like, ooh, we're not in the mood to do this, we wanna do some creative writing, then I would always, play around and work on one of my scripts. But that was definitely helpful. For rewriting, after the first draft, do you have an approach in regards to, like, for each draft, like, are you focusing on one thing?
I think usually after every, whether it's a first draft or a 30th draft, there's always something that I know I'm not happy with. So, which is good. It's like, it's not like, it's perfect, I'm done. So after a first draft, I used to be really scared to show first drafts to people because it's like showing people your diary.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know, if you want to make money writing, like you're gonna have to show people your stuff. So like that's where like my writers group comes in. We give each other like really good comprehensive notes, and we'll talk about it. Like we'll have like a very long discussion about things. And usually, even if I don't agree with a note, or like if people are confused about something, that'll be really clarifying for me in terms of like, okay, maybe I don't like the note that they're giving, or like maybe I don't like the pitch that they're giving, but it's like, yeah, I need to fix this thing. Or like, no, I want to dig my heels in this, and that means I just need to like make it clearer. We go for outside insight, and then just like dive in again.
Have you ever experienced that something you wrote in the first draft that you at first like cringed at, that was horrible, and then realized like to other people that was like one of the best moments in the script?
I think yes, but not because it's like bad, but because maybe it was like too personal, or like.
Right, but that's what I mean.
Yeah.
I think sometimes sometimes I'll see a script, it's like the fourth draft, and it's just kind of not working, so I'll ask the writer to bring me their first draft. And so they'll bring the first draft, and I'll be like, ooh, this, and this. And I'm like, why are these not in this draft? And they're like, oh, I just cringed when I read it, and I thought it was so bad. And sometimes when we think something is really bad in our first draft, and we react poorly to it, it's because it makes us feel vulnerable. But that vulnerability is one of the most powerful tools in art. So, I think that one of the things when you're working through your writing is start to recognize, does this make me uncomfortable because it's not actually not working, or is this making me uncomfortable because it's vulnerable and I've never seen anyone do it before, and that means it's true to your voice, it's your artistry, and it's novel to other people, which is the most important thing you can have in a script. And I think even if you're kind of cringing because it's something that's really bad and not working, I've found that if you dig into the things that are really bad and not working, like if you're writing artistically, it went on the page for a reason. So even if it comes out the most cliche thing in the world, if you replace judgment of it with curiosity and go, wait a minute, I put this on the page, my artistry vomited this out for a reason, what's that about? You will find that like the execution of it isn't how it should be, but actually the concept of it is quite brilliant and good. And that's just something that I would hope that, more emerging writers will trust their voice and just say, okay, this isn't working yet, but still stay true to those things, because if you read a draft of yours and everything feels comfortable, you're probably writing a bunch of stuff that we've already read. And I just don't think that's useful to anyone in the industry.
My boss on Be Fair gave me really good advice. She said that usually the best things come out of, like, best writing comes out of things that you're afraid of. And I definitely, I would say the first 3 pilots I wrote, I was sort of like hauling at an idea, but like not fully diving into it because I didn't want to, and I was resistant, and like there are a lot of reasons for why, but like when I finally actually attacked that thing head on, like that's a script that got me my manager, like that's a script that's getting me staff. It's like, you have to be willing to go to a place that maybe like that you don't have an answer for, but like it's your thing trying to like find that answer.
Right. I'm always telling people like, first of all, always write towards fear. I feel like if someone says something, you're like, oh, that would scare me to write, then you should definitely write that script immediately. And that, I just think that starting from a place of something that feels really visceral or true, but you don't fully understand, is a much better place to start a project than something that you totally understand. If you totally understand it, honestly, it's probably gonna, by the time you get to a third draft, you're probably gonna be so bored that you won't have the interest to get through a final draft. But if you start with something where you're like, I genuinely don't understand, like whether it's about human nature or about your family or about anything else, but you're like, I feel it and I feel very intensely about this, but I just don't get it. Then like that trying to figure stuff out will carry you through all of those maybe 15 drafts that you need to get through. And it's most of my writers with like one of my writers, he's been working in TV for 25 years. And he worked with me for a while, and then he came back to me this year, and he's like, I wrote this one script, and my agent loves it, and they use it all the time, and I've written 3 scripts after it, and they keep being like, no, we're gonna send this other one out still because, he's just like, I need to figure out why, and I need to figure out like how to write another one, because he's like, he's like, I know I'm still getting gigs off of this, but he's like, I want to write another one that people respond as well to, and so we were working on that of figuring out what actually makes him feel uncomfortable and helping him feel confident about writing towards that part of it, because I think that's the difference between just craft and art. That art is to say, only I can write this, which means I have to go to those weird, vulnerable places that, maybe for someone else, if you were like, I'm very comfortable writing of murders and rapes and like death and violence, I'm just like, la-di-da, that's not actually where I need to be writing now. What actually scares me and makes me more vulnerable is actually writing more about love, which I can't even say without feeling stupid in front of you guys.
About that.
No, don't turn this around on me. We're here to
That's my favorite thing to talk about.
But it's true. So for me, like when I force myself to sit there and be like, okay, I'm gonna write it out loud. Like that's where the more vulnerable work comes from, and that's the work that people respond more to. Even though I look at it and I'm like, this is a cheesy pile of crap. This is, and everyone else is always just like, oh no. Like this is, and so just trusting that's part, I think, of being an artist is knowing that like if you feel uncomfortable showing it to people, like the place for that like is actually a really good place. Like you should feel nervous as hell showing to people, and if you're not, then you probably haven't dug in deep enough and found that place where you're going to be able to write something like no one else could possibly write. Because I have such a weird point of view about love. I'm like, first time I felt love, I was like, this is a good time to just shove my hand in a deep grinder and move on. That was my first instinct when I felt love. I literally avoided the person for 2 months. I was like, oh, I finally love, and I'm like, I will never see this person again. I'm gonna throw myself into my work. But yes, so run towards the things that are vulnerable, and you'll know, because as you saw, like I was up here talking all confidently, whatever, and then I started stuttering, and I feel like my chest is opening up, and all of you guys are looking into my soul. But that's where you gotta, because like that's when you make connections. Vulnerability is what connects people. And I was talking to some other writers the other day, because they're like, I saw this movie and it was so stupid, and I knew exactly what was happening, and I still cried at the end. And I was like, it's because of vulnerability. And like whether it's an actor or a script or a piece of work or just in a conversation, when someone chooses to be emotionally naked in front of you, like empathy comes out, and suddenly you can't help but feel connected now. Like the air changes, right? And suddenly you're like, oh, I think we become our best selves when, unless you're a psychopath, but like the rest of us become our best selves when someone around us is being vulnerable. Does that make sense?
I think and I think another way of like thinking about it too is like the whole, especially in any kind of writing, but like I'm coming at it from television writing, like people don't want to read the same old thing over and over again.
Yeah.
And if you're coming at it from a place where you're trying to answer a question, like kind of an existential question that like doesn't have an answer, you're searching for an answer, like that plus your own vulnerability is really compelling.
Yeah, and especially for TV, where TV, the first question they always get asked is why you?
Right.
Why are you the person to write on this project, right? And that can be very vulnerable because if you're not writing something that is directly from your life, which you shouldn't have to, but there is this sense of you need to find that personal connection.
Right, because if you don't, then like who cares, literally.
Yeah, because craft-wise, there's 100,000 TV writers that have been doing it twice as long as you. Why don't they just get one of those writers, right? And so this idea that you always have to have the craft, of course, but when you've also got showrunners that are taking care of tons of stuff and making sure everything's on point, the art of that the work ethic, the ease to work with, and the artistry of if you're having an artistry that can bring something to the room that they haven't yet seen before, I think is one of the most valuable things. And so the more you can practice that before you get to those situations, the easier it'll be. And especially I think with pitching or taking meetings, learning how to be vulnerable without breaking down or because vulnerability is not weakness if done correctly. Vulnerability has boundaries. You have to set those boundaries. And so, I get to practice all the time with my writers or with my classes. But if you've ever taken a class from me, you'll definitely know I probably cried during them. But there's always a boundary in which I'm like, and now we move on to the learning. And so if you can practice that with your friends or with anyone, the first time you practice being vulnerable in a pitch should not be when you're pitching to a really, really important person. The first time you practice give your pitch should not be in a meeting with a really, really important person. So what do you find most nerve-wracking or difficult about either the first draft, the rewrites, or I will say the final draft, or more so the draft that you choose to let go of the project, because I don't think any script is ever really done.
I agree. I think there's always a point in rewriting where you've seen all the words so many times that you're like, why am I writing this? This doesn't, who cares? It doesn't matter. You get to a point where you're like, will anyone care about this? Mm-hmm. And I feel like, to me, sometimes that's an indication of it's done, because now if I'm beating a dead horse and keep changing and it's no, it's comma, no, it's a whatever, it's no,
yeah, you're crunching on grammar.
You gotta let it go. Starting is really hard, especially if you're working on an original idea. I have an idea right now that I'm really excited about, but I feel like I don't know enough about, not about the thing that I'm writing. I know emotionally the thing that I'm writing, but the world of it, I feel like I don't know. So I will use, to a certain point, research is very important, but then I know that when I get to the point of I'm just gonna Google this one more time, it's no, start writing, Yeah. Sometimes starting can be scary, but I don't know, I find it all, I'm a weirdo in that I actually really like writing. I know a lot of writers who hate it, but they can't do anything. It's a compulsion. I find it really exciting, and the thing that's for me really exciting to track is this time last year I wrote my script for The Affair. And it was happening at a time where I had gotten this other fellowship and all those deadlines were the exact same, and I was just hello, I'm living my dream, but it doesn't, I'm not happy all the time, and it's it's that feeling of I'm getting everything I want, but it doesn't feel the way I think it should feel. Yeah. And I was sort of freaking out, but then I was just no, just do the work, and then comparing it to, I just handed in my Halston script, and I wrote my Halston script way faster than the computer script. So to me, the exciting thing moving through all these projects is getting to see your actual progress of just oh, what I did last year in 3 weeks, I did in a week and a half this time. Mm-hmm. Or I don't know, I'm nerdy and very type A, and I want to get good grades and have a teacher like me. So things like that really excites me. And I also just feel I feel I've been writing for a long time, but certainly not professionally. So to me, every new draft, every new step is like an amazing achievement, you know? So like I'm trying to relish in that and like I'm also trying to just like, because my therapist says so, like be nice for myself, you know what I mean? And like it's so easy to get wrapped up in like, oh, the deadline, like, oh, I hate this, like, oh, I don't want this to write. It's like, you're getting paid to write. This is fucking amazing.
Yeah.
Like, you're good, you know what I mean? Like, and just like remembering that and like being kind to myself.
Well, I think it's one of the most important things to practice before you start being paid to write and then earlier in your career, because I work with a lot of writers now that are like 10 to 20 years into their career, and they're so unhappy and they're so jaded, and you know, some of them it's like and the fraud police are still on their back, and the self-doubt is so intense because there's so much more at stake for them, you know, that like I have one writer who just hasn't written anything of his own in 5 years. In 5 years, because, you know, he writes other people's stuff, but he became so terrifying for him to write something of his own because he was just like, what if it isn't good? What if people don't like it? What if my agent drops it? What if my writing is? What if I lose my third house? You know, and I was like, could you give it to me? But it's true that if you don't, this is all about your mindset and your approach. Like, if you stay in that place where like you're celebrating just the fact that you're moving forward every year, that like this week you wrote and you have more pages than last week, and you're a better writer than you were last week for having written those pages, and you stay grateful for the things you have, and you keep reminding yourself. You know, I think about that. I'll be like, if someone asks me how I'm doing, I don't compare myself to other people. I think back to where I was 3 years ago, and I'm like, oh, I'm doing fabulous. Holy shit. Like, way better than I was doing 3 years ago. I'm kicking ass, you know, and that just helps you to keep your mental and artistic health in order in a way that I sadly, there's a lot of people that are just, you know, and I have some writers that they'll send me scripts, but they're incapable of even reading their own work. They'll write something and they'll send it to me, but they can't even sit down and read their own work because their anxiety and their fear of it not being as good as their last project is so high that they just can't do it. And I just hate to see people in that much pain. Artists, writers who like used to love to write, just being petrified of their own work. And so I'm so happy that like.
Well, but I'm also not like, you know, I'm at the beginning of my career. I think it must be really scary, especially if you've like won awards on your first project, or like your first thing that got you noticed is like. That is sophomore slump can be a real thing. Yeah. So like, I can't necessarily speak to that. Like maybe soon, hopefully.
Well, no, I hope so too.
But I know. I'm miserable. The way I think about it is like, when I moved to LA without a job, and that's not me at all. Like I like Millington, future. I like having a roadmap. And this is like the worst career to have that for. But I'd rather do this career than like sit at a job where I know exactly what's gonna happen and like my soul is dying. I look at it like, okay, I moved to LA 5 years ago. And same thing, like a year after I moved, into the second year of my time in LA, I got a job at and I was thinking like, oh my god, like, and like one of our colleagues, I guess this is whatever, I don't know how to do that. At a certain point I realized, wow, when I moved to LA, I moved on like Golden Globes weekend, and I remember this because Robert Redford was on my flight, and my parents were like in the terminal with me, and they were like, Tina! And I was like, no! And like my coworker was like on my flight, like, so it's like, I will remember that forever. And then like cut to 2 years later, like, one of my colleagues is like accepting a Golden Globe for her incredible work on the show, and it's just like, I'm working, like, I can't believe this. Like, I would have never thought that would have been possible. And then, cut to 2 years later, it's like, I'm writing an episode of the show. And so, like, I feel like everyone sets goals for themselves, whatever they are, they're achievable. You just have to do the work. So I feel like I kind of have already achieved all of my goals. So now for me going forward, and like, again, let's like check in on this in a few years, way. But like, almost anything now after like these first set of goals is like amazing icing on like a very weird cake. You know what I mean? Like, and I feel like, I don't know, I'm that person who like will always be excited by like little perks. Like, I don't think I'll ever be like jaded by that.
But I will say this, that comes from, that comes from the way that you talk to yourself. That comes from, that's a choice. Like some people, their parents gave them better abilities to do that than others, but no matter where you are on that spectrum, because I used to be the complete opposite. I was such a asshole, and I was such an unhappy person, and nothing was ever good enough. And then I worked my butt off to change the way that my mind works and the way my mind thinks and my neural pathways and most of my personality. And now I'm just like, now I am able to like be grateful for everything that I have, and now people actually want to work with me, which was a problem at the beginning of my career. But that's why I think
you were miserable. Go on.
I was miserable. I was suicidal. I was a mess.
I would love to spend 14 hours a day with you.
But no, like this is why I think it's so important. Like, if you want to be a great artist, you have to take care of your physical, mental, emotional, and artistic health. It is not something to be ignored. The idea of like the tortured artist is so last century. It is not going to help you anymore in this industry. And I think I had romanticized like the depressed artist. And I mean, I started as a poet, okay, which is the most suicidal group of artists on the face of the earth throughout history, So I think that's just something that I want, I think is very important because it's rampant in the emerging writer community and it's rampant in the professional community. Probably some of the people we work with are like suffering and not letting anyone know because there's such this fear of like showing any weakness that like if you're not fully functional, if you're not fully on top of things that, and the best time to take care of that is to do it before you get under the pressure of being in a writer's room, or like me in my first really huge gig where I was making more money than I'd ever made in my life, and it was this huge project that was being, the biggest celebrity in it that I could imagine, and I was the first time I ever got real writer's block because I never had to write under that much pressure before, and I did not handle it well. I mean, I got my draft in and everything went fine, but it pretty much destroyed a relationship and drove me to the point where it's like I was taking like 18 Oxycontin a day just to like lower my nerves and like get out of my own way. And luckily I never touched another pill after that project and never will. But I mean, I totally broke down and handled it the wrong way. And so I was like, I just want to make sure that that's something that we all work on is that, go see a therapist. Therapists are it takes a while to find one you like, and that's okay. But everyone needs to have a healthy mindset going into an industry that is as batshit crazy as the film and television industry.
Well, I think you have to realize like why you're doing this. So like again, coming in as an assistant, like my life season 2 of the affair, I like was barely sleeping, eating horribly. I was incredibly stressed out. I gained like 30 pounds because of all of that. And like, whatever, your body doesn't respond well to stress and like not eating and not sleeping and like freaking out all the time. But for me, like I knew why I was putting myself through that. Like I was like, I don't care if I like give away a year of my life to like this job, to like not seeing my friends, not seeing my family. Like I knew why I was there and I knew why I was suffering at that time. But if you're doing something like that and you are like, why? Like you gotta ask yourself,
well, what's the vision? What's the vision of the future that? Because
right.
One of the things they say about motivation is, falling in love with the future version of yourself. Right? If you have a clear image, that's how I got out of like White Trash America. This teacher, my poetry teacher, he painted this picture of me as a poet in New York City. And at 12 years old, I just fell in love with the idea of me sitting in a cafe, with a latte, even though I wasn't allowed to drink caffeine because we were Mormons. Just sipping a latte and like writing in a journal and staring out the window. I think I was probably picturing Paris.
Wearing a turtleneck.
I was wearing a turtleneck with gray.
Yeah.
There was like a poodle at my foot. But he just painted, he's like, oh my God, he's like, you could go to New York and you could be a writer and you could live in this big city and be surrounded by other weirdo artists. And I just fell in love with that future image of myself, so that like after that I was a straight A student. I didn't drink alcohol, I didn't try cigarette, I didn't do any of that until I got to college and lost my mind. But I think if you're just like, I want to be a writer because it seems cool, or because like, I think it's gonna solve all my problems, like if you can't really visualize that, like what that looks like, and realize that, yeah, if you're gonna go the assistant route, like you're gonna have to give up years of your life to working and know that it's worth it if you have, if that's what you really want to do. But I just think it might be worth everyone, if you don't have that, spending some time of like visualizing, like what do I want, what for me, if I could wake up in 5 years and my life was just the most amazing life I could have, what would that look like on a daily basis? And then I would be asking around people who actually are writers and figure out, is this realistic? Because I think sometimes people think like, oh, it would be great, I'll just like wake up and then I'll go to the writer's room and then I'll go home at 5 p.m.
Yeah,
right. No.
Well, the flip of that too is when I first got the job, I obviously didn't have time to write for myself. But the thing that was really helpful to see was to see other people writing and to see other people's processes. So like at the time, my boss, she already had a 2-year-old, she'd just gotten married, she was about to have her second child, she was running a show. We had to keep her pregnancy a secret, which was insane because we were on set and like, you cannot keep a secret on set.
She was always carrying laundry baskets.
Well, or just like, she's very thin and she loves wearing like big, so like the big sweaters helped for her. But like, I would get to set early to literally know where every single bathroom was in case she got nauseous, which she was all the time. So I'm watching this woman like struggle through life, running a show, and she wrote the finale of season 2 in like 3 days while like barfing her brains out, and I was like, I can also write my pilot. Like, I don't have kids, I'm not nauseous all the time, I'm not running a show, I have no excuses. You know what I mean? Yeah. So like that was a really amazing like wake up call for me of like, I don't need everything to be like perfect in the light and like let's snap and whatever. It's like no, just like plug in your computer and like do the work.
Just vomit that draft
Yeah.
and get to the next one. Awesome. So I hope y'all have some questions. I'd like to open up to questions for a few minutes before we mingle and then we'll mosey on out into the frigid cold of New York City. Yes.
So thank you so much to both of you. I'm Adnia. I'm a former radio presenter who had massive performance anxiety. So now I actually teach people how to overcome performance anxiety.
Oh, excellent.
So it's so cool. I had no idea the conversation was going to take this unexpected turn. That's exactly why I'm so passionate about writers, actors, comedians not doing the direct work because of being freaked out, comparing themselves to first drafts or where they are now, their peers, all of that. So I'm quite curious to hear from both of you. What do you do? Because you both mentioned that you've experienced this in the past. Like, what are your practices or tools that you do to kind of calm that besides taking the
No taking pills. Yeah. What do you do to calm nerves or to get through high stakes situations?
I'm very type A, so I always like making a plan for myself.
What?
I'm very type A, so I like to make a plan for myself. I like structure, and at a certain point, it's just like you gotta do it. You just have to do it. You have to get it done. Like there's always a little bit of procrastinating. Like there's like one day where it's like I just need to clean my house.
Yep.
And it's like okay. It's clean now, you can work now, But that being said, I always find like it's easier for me to write in a space without clutter, so I do make sure that I'm like always tidying up and like spatially keeping your space so that mentally I can be there. I also try not to be hard on myself because like you could try to just like bang something out, like write 12 hours straight for like 3 days in a row and like kind of not sleep, but like you're not going to do your best work. So like for me, I know realistically, it's like I have like a good 6 hours of working every so, like, as long as I'm sort of keeping on track with that, that really helps. And honestly, the thing that's really nice about being in a community like this is like, a lot of my friends are writers also, and just being able to, if I'm stuck, like, I can call up a number of friends to like talk about something for like 5 minutes, and that turns into like 2 hours. But like, being able to, writing is very solitary, but it doesn't have to be. So like, if you feel like you do need to like reach out and talk to people, or like get outside, or like whatever, like do some self-care, or like see a movie, you know, like I think anything that can like get you through it that's healthy is good. Talking to friends really helps. Exercising, actually, that helps. Who knew exercising was good for you?
I just have a hula hoop in my living room. It's the lazy person's exercise. Get a weighted one. I'm gonna spin.
Or like, there's like a short list of like songs, clips from movies, YouTube videos that like if I just like need energy or like need to like get in a better headspace, it's like, okay, I'll give myself 10 minutes. I will like dance around, I will like watch that interview with Jimmy Fallon where Nicole Kidman says that they were gonna go on a date, and then he was like, what? And then she was like, yeah, and you rejected me. Like, just things to like get me in like a good mental space. And then it's like, okay, back to work again.
I mean, there's so many things. There's so many, a ridiculous amount of techniques and that I've used and I've studied in my job, just because I work with so many different people. And again, there's not one thing that works for everyone. I think that's the biggest thing to remember about, like, your brain is weird and different, your experiences are different, and just because I was like, it says, this works for me, if it doesn't work for you, then like, that's cool, and it doesn't work for you. And if anyone ever tries to say this works for everyone, then ask them how much their program is and move on, because they're selling you something. But the thing that works best for me, the thing that actually made me get through that project, and the thing that I'll do with myself, and not with every single one of my writers, but with a lot of them I can do, is, because I told this to someone once, and they were even a therapist, who was like, that's terrible. I'm like, yo, this works for me. Is I have to go directly to the worst case scenario. And I go, all right, Hinds, what is the worst thing that could happen? I'm like, I turn the script in. And not the worst, like, crazy thing, like I turn it in and like, and the aliens come down and take over because my script is so bad, you know? But realistically, what's the worst thing that could happen? And I was like, the worst thing that happens is I turn the script in, the producers absolutely hate it, they never work with me again, they hire someone else on the project, and I no longer have a job. And I was like, okay, great. And if that happened, how would it feel? And I was like, it would feel like shit. I would feel like a failure. I would probably cry. I was like, all right, Jess, then what next would you do? And I was like, I'd probably call my stepmom, who's like my soulmate in life. And I talked to her, and I was like, okay, then what would happen? Like, well, I'd probably feel a little better, but I'd feel shit. And I take myself through, and then like the next thing is like, and then I'll start another script. And I'll start looking for another job, and I will be fine, and I will still have my family, and I will still have my friends, and I will still have my artistry, and taking myself meditatively through what that experience would be like, and realizing like, it will hurt, but it will be temporary, and you know what, I'll be fine, is just, that calms me down every single time. You know, that I just think works. Again, not for everyone, but for a lot of the writers that I work with, and I'll just take them through that, and if it takes 20 minutes to be like, and then suddenly they'll realize, like, I guess then I'll start a new script, and then I'll get excited about the next project, and oh, then I'll probably get another gig, you know, you're like, oh yeah, you're gonna be fine, because when we project into the future of what something's gonna be, it's like we hold in that space, and we think that that's gonna be forever, that we have such a false belief in permanence as human beings, and nothing is permanent. Like, even if you'd say, like, who'd say they're a good person? We all know hard on Jesus. Right, but okay, but who in the past month has been kind of a dick to someone? Right, like, you're not a good person all the time. I'm like 3 a.m. and the G train pulls away from the platform right before you're about to get on. You're not gonna be, like, everything, our identities, they are not permanent, they're fluctuating constantly. Right? And so just nothing is permanent, and that includes our suffering and our pain. And
I also think though, like, there's a podcast I listen to called Happier in Hollywood,
and it's run by two female writers, TV writers, who they're writing partners. And they talk about a lot, they talk about how like the gift that you have isn't a burden. And I think a lot of times it's really easy to get sort of like lost through the, what is the phrase? And not see the forest trees. Like, I'm getting paid to imagine things. Like, I'm not an EMT driver. I'm not like slaughtering pigs somewhere. I'm not like, I don't know, doing something that I don't want to do. Like, yeah, maybe this draft is hard, but like, life is amazing, you know? Like,
Yeah, also,
I'm so lucky.
I also use the thing where I'm just like, I'm not a surgeon. Like, if I have a bad day,
no one dies.
no one dies. I just write a bad scene and then I rewrite it the next day. And there's sometimes when
Yeah.
people are like, oh, I'm so scared to write it. What if it doesn't work? I'm like, then you'll write it again.
Yeah.
And you will be fine.
My sister is an actual doctor, and she actually has people dying at her job. She'll tell me stories of her day, and I'm crying. She's not crying. It's like, I know I can never do that. So like, thank God this is what my job is.
My sister's a therapist who works with very unhealthy individuals, and so like I'll be like, oh, I had a bad day, my producer said this. She's like, yeah, one of my clients showed up on my lawn with a horse head, and I'm like, you know what? I'm okay. Yeah, and then my best friend is also a therapist, and also she's the one who, when a youth commits a severe crime or murder, she's the one who analyzes them and decides whether they go to prison or go into therapy. So if I'm feeling bad, I just listen to her talk about her day, and she's like, and then he put his aunt's pieces in the refrigerator, and I'm like, I'm good. My writers are amazing. Don't have to worry about that. So yeah, I think those are some good tools. Is just think about those people and just be like, you know, I got it good. Any other questions from our lovely audience?